Hello, my name is Misty Hanson. I am a career counselor at Utah Valley University, and I'm excited to be here with you all today to talk about resumes and interviewing, specifically for our education students. And I'm going to share my screen with you so we can go through a PowerPoint presentation together. While I do that, I'll give you just a little bit of information about myself. I've been at UVU for almost 6 years now, and I have really loved working here. Prior to that, I was actually a kindergarten teacher for 10 years in Arizona. So my background is in education, definitely one of my passions and something I love. So again, I'm excited to be here with you all today. Let's start by talking about resumes and what a resume is, what you want to make sure you're including in your educational resume. First of all, a resume, the purpose of a resume is to get you that job interview so that you can go in, meet with the principal, and give them even more great information about who you are as a candidate. The resume should be concise. It should include only your most relevant information, and we'll talk through some of the things that you could add that could set you apart from some other candidates. A resume is considered a marketing tool. You definitely want to be setting your best foot forward, and we'll talk about some ways to do that. Some basics as far as resumes are concerned is that typically you want to ensure that you are limiting that resume to one page. Employers are busy. They're having lots of resumes that they need to look through. So ensuring that your resume is one page and has the most important information on it is going to benefit you. The next one, talking about including keywords and tailoring your resume. I know that tailoring your resume can sometimes be intimidating for students, and it was for me too. So I'm going to give you some different tips and tricks that will help you to find those keywords and then include them in your resume. We want to make sure that there are no I, me, or my in your resume. Because this is considered a professional document, we want to omit those personal pronouns. We want to make sure that whatever information we are sharing is honest and professional. And I'll give some examples of that as we go as well. Being aware of personal or controversial information. This is something that I like to have students think about. Like, there's no reason to include your age or your marital status on a resume. And then as far as controversial information, that could be something along the lines of political stances or religion. That's information that you typically want to leave off of your resume as well. Proofreading and obtaining feedback. This is one way that career counselors can really step in and help you. We offer resume reviews so that we can make sure that whatever you're sending out is your best work. And then references. There's a couple of different things we'll talk about as far as references. Typically, a reference, you'll have a cover page, a resume, and then a references page. With education resumes, that's a little bit different, and I'll show you an example when we get to that. You want to ensure that your resume includes your contact information. Kind of straightforward, right? That's expected. So your name, city and state, full address is not required. Then you'll want to make sure that you are adding in your phone number and your email address. And just a tip about an email address, I would recommend not using your UVU email address. Most employers are a little bit leery to use that email address because they realize that most students don't check it as often. And then once you graduate, it probably will not be your primary email address. So I would recommend creating a Gmail account if you don't already have one. You can use different email addresses as well, but Gmail is kind of the golden standard as far as that's concerned. Also, making sure that the email address name that you're choosing is appropriate is something that you'll want to take into consideration as well. You can also add a summary, a branding statement, or an objective. When we look at the resume example together, you'll see there is an objective on that, and I'll talk you through some of that. The next section we recommend adding is an education section where you can show that you have a secondary degree or an elementary ed degree or a special ed degree, and then anything that you've done additionally within that education section. And the final section that we're going to kind of talk about is an employment or your experience section. That will include your student teaching for sure, and then I'll give you some other ideas as well. It's optional to add leadership experience. Maybe you've been a part of a leadership team. Maybe you helped with the PTA at your child's school. That could all be great, either leadership experience or even volunteer experience. If you've been in the military, that can be helpful to add. If you have honors or awards, if you have a scholarship that you won, or if you've been on the dean's list, that can be impressive to employers. If you are someone who speaks another language or has international experience, that can also really benefit you. What this helps to do is create a really strong image about who you are as a candidate. In talking about creating that strong image, one of the things we want to do is make sure that we are using strong action verbs. This is one way that we can kind of tailor our resume or find those key words that we talked about earlier. One of my favorite things to do is to go through a job description that I'm interested in and highlight some keywords or phrases that then I can go back and add to my resume. Within that, you want to make sure that you're not plagiarizing the job description. So making sure that you adjust your verbiage just enough to make it different from the resume so that it's not plagiarism. You can see one of the other things that you could add is quantification. You can add in some numbers. So here, supervised and trained 14 technical staff, responded to 25 calls per day, saved the company 200,000 each year. That really helps the employer to get the scope of what you're capable of, what you've done before. It also gives those specifics so an employer can really see who you are as a candidate. Something that is important to add in as well is incorporating the results. And we kind of highlight that in this last bullet point where it says directed the design of a software program that saved the company 200,000 each year in labor costs. That's huge. That's something that an employer would want to know. In thinking about the format of a resume and what we want that resume to look like, this resume example for education students is typically preferred, and I'm going to walk you through some of this. You'll see name, obviously, at the top. Then we start with contact information, city and state, phone number, email address, and then if you do have a LinkedIn profile, adding your LinkedIn URL can just help the employer, again, gather more information about you. We do have an objective on this resume. In some cases, objectives are considered a little bit antiquated. In the educational realm, it can be helpful because it gives the employer or principal right away information on the position you're looking for. So this could say secondary education graduate seeking an English position in Alpine School District. Anything along those lines, but it kind of gives you the ability to share with them exactly what you're looking for. The next section we have is an education section. You can see that we list the bachelor's degree first and in bold. Draw the employer's attention there over UVU. Really highlight your degree. We have an anticipated graduation date listed, and then we have UVU and ORM kind of tucked under that. We've listed GPA. If you have a minor, that's something great to list. This is where you could list other languages that you speak as well. For EdTPA, I've had some students ask if they have to list the score, and no, you do not. You could list past EdTPA and the date, or if you don't have your score yet, you could list EdTPA scores pending. Completely appropriate. If you have Praxis scores or any testing scores, you can list those. I know in the state of Utah, they're not always required. Some students have those because they might be working towards an endorsement. So if you have anything like that, also it could be beneficial to add. And then that level 1 teaching license, again, this is something you could put in progress or an anticipated date for that. As far as the experience section, you'll see the name and location of the school. And then we have student teacher here. This is probably going to be very common for you all is to have student teacher kind of as that top experience. One thing that you'll see is we've right aligned all of the dates. And this is to bring your reader's eye all the way across the page. All of our dates line up on this right-hand margin. So that's something that you could consider as well. Going back to the bullet points in this first section, these first 2 bullet points, I leave really general on purpose. I'm going to challenge you to come up with bullet points that really fit your student teaching experience. You'll see that then we have a cooperating teacher, a principal, and a university supervisor listed. This is one of the differences between educational resumes and other industry standard resumes. So on your resume, it is expected that you'll list the name and contact information of your cooperating teacher, principal, and university supervisor. And you'll want to have a conversation with each of those individuals prior to doing this. So you can just let them know, I'm getting ready to apply for positions. I have your name listed on my teacher's cooperating or on my resume as my cooperating teacher, and I have your phone number and email address. Is that okay? Then we have, oh, I'm sorry about that. We have some additional information listed here. Title I teacher's aide, but you could put in your field experience work here as well. And then you're going to list 3 to 5 bullet points describing that. We have listed additional qualifications as well. You can see that this is obtaining 2 grants to supplement a science curriculum, presenting a reading workshop, and assembling a parent support group. All of those would be relevant to an educational setting. Moving on to interviewing. Interviewing is one of my favorite topics to talk about. There's so much that goes into it, but we'll go over a lot of great information. To start with, I'm going to share with you just kind of a fun little video to kind of kick things off.
Mr. Goodman? What makes you think you're qualified for this job?
Oh! Ah! Stop punching me!
Stop punching
Please,
me.
sir, no! Ah! Oh! Don't throw me!
No, not that fish. Not...
Don't touch me! Keep your hands off of me! Ah! Don't throw me out!
Thanks.
Here it is, huh? Get it?
Get in the groove, it's easy. You just let your body move. I'm a love guru. Your mother won't.
So that's one idea on how to get an interview. But honestly, we'll go over some really good information. That video just always kind of makes me laugh. When you are invited in for an interview, it can be overwhelming. But just remember, they would not have called you in to interview if you were not qualified. So go in with that confidence that they do want to meet you. They want to know more. There's going to be 3 main components to an interview: what you do before the interview, what you do during, and then after. So we'll start with before. One of the very first things you're going to want to work on is a me in 30 seconds pitch. What that typically entails is your name, your education, and some of your experience. So a really simple one for me could be, hello, my name's Misty. I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education and a master's in educational leadership. I've taught kindergarten in Arizona for 10 years, and I currently am a career counselor at Utah Valley University. That is a simplified me in 30 seconds pitch, but it gives the employer general information about who I am. You'll also want to know the school that you're applying for, and then you really kind of want to look at their demographic, their mission, what's going on at that school. Are there any big projects that they're working on? That's information that you should know. You should also understand your market value. That's going to be different from district to district. Some districts offer signing bonuses, other districts have a higher salary scale. So knowing what you're going into is going to benefit you. Beginning to clean up your social media presence. This is something that educators really have to be careful about. Whether that's fair or not is not for me to judge, but we do have principals, parents, teachers looking up your social media accounts if you're applying for a position. Remember, if you have liked something, commented on something, that is essentially the same as you endorsing it or co-signing on it. And even if your profiles are private, we all know that there's friends of friends that can sometimes see those things. So I would begin to kind of look at what you have and make sure that it represents how you want to be perceived. You should also know specifics about the position and the program or the program that you're applying for. So don't go into the interview and say, was this for a third grade position or fifth? I've applied for so many jobs, I can't remember. You'll want to keep track so that you know what the position is. And I'm going to go over a resource that can help you. So keeping track of all the jobs that you're applying for, whether it's using a spreadsheet or some other tool, is going to be something that I'm going to recommend. So you can scan this QR code, and there is a spreadsheet that we've created that will help you. Please make sure if you're going to use it that you make a copy of it and then save that to your computer before you begin filling it out. If you don't save a copy, the information will be deleted. But that will give you a way to really look at all of the jobs you're applying for and keep track of them. Before you go in for the interview as well, you want to make sure that your appearance and your hygiene are well taken care of. Most of our principals are expecting business professional when you go in for that interview. So unless they tell you otherwise, that's what I would plan on. I would be really careful as well because some of our students, they student teach at a school, they have that rapport within that school community, and so they tend to take it not quite as seriously, maybe not dressing up as much as they could. I'm going to recommend business professional, even if you student taught at that school. So business professional for gentlemen, that's a suit and a tie, business shoes. And then for ladies, it's business pant or a skirt or a nice dress, a blouse, a blazer or a cardigan, and then professional shoes. Please make sure that you are not wearing too much perfume or cologne and that you have appropriate makeup or earrings, jewelry, necklaces, so that you look like you would be a teacher. Supporting documents that you'll want to prepare is definitely some copies of your resume. I recommend taking those with you just in case they don't have copies of your resume for everyone, perhaps who's in the interview. You can also take letters of recommendation. You could take with you a portfolio if you have one. Keep in mind that there might not be enough time in the interview to go through that, but if there are some key things that you want to point out, having that available could be helpful. And then a notepad. One reason I'm going to recommend taking a notepad with you is you should have some follow-up questions for the employer, and you can write those down on the notepad and then take that into the interview with you. That would be completely appropriate. You'll want to make sure that you have a firm handshake. And we all kind of laugh about it, but it is cliche for a reason, right? That little limp fish handshake or too firm of a handshake. You want to make sure that you've practiced that handshake. Definitely making eye contact, that connects you to the employer. So make eye contact with them, smile, and ensure that you have good posture. You're sitting up straight, you're smiling, you're happy. They can tell that you're excited to be there. Making sure that you have turned off your cell phone is something I'm going to recommend. And I don't recommend even just putting it on silent. If your phone rings and it's on silent, many times you can hear it ringing, the buzz of it. If you get a text message, we might hear that go off. So my recommendation is as you're walking into the school to interview, turn off your phone so it's not a distraction at all. If you have gum, go ahead and spit that out before your interview. And then if you're someone who maybe clicks a pen top or plays with your hair, try to be calm and not have those distracting habits. We do offer a mock interview as well. So you can come in and practice your interviewing skills with a career counselor before your interview. That's something that we're happy to help with. I will say 100% of the students I meet with for a mock interview, when they leave, all of them have said, I feel so much better now. Now I know what to expect. So we are happy to help with a mock interview. There's several different interview types that we'll kind of talk through really quickly. There's a one-on-one interview where it's just you and the interviewer, kind of straightforward. There's also a panel interview where it's going to be you and several different members who are interviewing you. So in a lot of cases, it's a principal, maybe an assistant principal, maybe a team lead or a department chair, a couple of teachers. They might even call some of the members from the PTA in or some of the parents from the school. So that's what you'll want to be prepared for. One of the biggest tips I have for you during a panel interview is when you are asked a question, you're going to make eye contact with the person who asks you the question. When you're answering the question, you want to share your eye contact around to everyone in that panel interview. Group interviews are not common for our education students, but if you happen to be in a group interview, typically what employers are looking for is that you're friendly, you participate, you have good ideas, and you're working well together as a team. If you have a phone interview, some things that you'll want to keep in mind is making sure your phone is charged so it doesn't die in the middle of your interview. Making sure that you are somewhere that's quiet so there's no distractions. One thing I always recommend is putting a smile on your face, even though you're on the phone. That really does carry through and will help you kind of build rapport with that recruiter or principal. If you have a video interview, there's a lot that goes into that as well, making sure your computer is charged, making sure you have good lighting, ensuring that they can hear you, and then looking at the camera. I know it can be so distracting. We want to look at ourselves, but making sure that you're making eye contact with the camera. Performance interviews, that was your student teaching. That's essentially a performance interview. So you've kind of already done that. It's that hands-on interview that they want to make sure you can do the job. And then there are social gatherings. Sometimes students are interviewing for positions and the recruiter might call them and have them come join a team event just to make sure that they're a good fit. In that case, one of the things I recommend is still maintaining that professionalism. So let's say that they invite you to a picnic, making sure that you're still dressed appropriately, that you're interacting in a professional way is still something that's going to be advised. This is just a funny little meme about interviewing and making sure that you can get that interview. Let's talk through some interview question types. There are several different types, and one of the first ones is motivational questions. Why did you want to be a teacher? That is probably one of the biggest that you'll hear. So start thinking about what were the reasons I wanted to be a teacher? What do I want to accomplish within my classroom? There's also traditional interview questions. Tell me about a time that you had a challenging student in your class. How did you handle that? Tell me about a time that you were working on a team and it didn't go well. Tell me a little bit about yourself. That's where that me in 30 seconds elevator pitch comes in handy. Tell me about some of your strengths and why they're your strengths. So start thinking of answers to all of those questions. There's also performance or behavioral questions. Tell me about a time when you had a parent who had some questions for you, but class had already started. How would you handle that situation? There are illegal questions. An employer cannot ask you about your age, your race, religion, marital or family status, disabilities, sexual orientation, or gender. So keep that in mind. I will say though, if let's say that you're applying for a job as a bartender, in that case, an employer could ask your age to make sure that you meet that age requirement. And then we do have some employers that ask what we call like crazy or critical thinking interviews, and we gave a couple examples there. If you are asked one of those questions, one of the biggest things they're looking for is just your problem solving skills. Not necessarily a perfect correct answer, but just how can you process through the question and come up with an answer. And we have another little meme here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I'd rather not. I really need this job. One of the things that you can do throughout your answers to really add some diversification is what we call the star. And that's where you're going to give the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So start thinking about that. Think of some situations that have come up in your student teaching or in your other experience. What was the situation? What had to be accomplished, the task? What actions did you take? And then what was the result of that? We want to try to avoid filler words. Those filler words, they're a part of our daily vocabulary. They really are. I coach to this all day and I still use filler words. Where they are most noticeable is at the beginning of your answers. If you can eliminate the filler words there, that is going to be impressive to those principals. So we listed a few of those filler words. You should have some good follow-up questions to ask the principal. So this is where bringing in a notepad and a pen is helpful. You can have those questions already written down, and as the principal answers them, you can take some notes on that information. So some of the questions I like to ask is, what support will I have in this district as a first-year teacher? I might ask them a little bit about their school, their community, and then I might ask when I can expect to hear back from them. Concluding the interview, thanking the interviewer or interviewers for their time, complimenting them if you can, restate your interest with them. Let them know, I'm very excited for this position. I hope to hear back from you soon. And then if it's appropriate, giving them one last handshake before you leave. After your interview, it is really, really nice and sometimes kind of unexpected for employers to get a thank you note, but they really appreciate it. So this is something I recommend, and you can either take some little note cards with you. After the interview, you'll leave, maybe go to the lobby or your car, write out some quick handwritten notes for each of the interviewers, or you can send an email once you get home. But I would recommend sending either the handwritten note or the email within 24 hours of your interview so that it doesn't look like an afterthought. One of my favorite things to do after interviewing is to really kind of reflect on the interview. Did it go the way I wanted to? Are there other answers I could have given? What other information could I have shared? If they call you and let you know they're going with a different candidate, letting them know that you are still really thankful for the opportunity. You'd love for them to keep you in mind if there's other positions coming up in the future is a way to really show grace with that rejection. And then appropriate follow-up. This comes kind of back to back with one of the follow-up questions I recommend asking is, when can I expect to hear back from you? Let's say that you can expect to hear back from us on Tuesday. Then you could say, if I haven't heard back from you on Tuesday, would it be okay if I sent an email on Wednesday? That would be appropriate follow-up to see where they are in the decision-making process. Then you'll kind of want to look at the job offer. So a lot of times with teaching, there's not going to be ways to negotiate the salary. They have salary schedules, but you can kind of look at that and determine if that feels like a good fit for you. Take a look at the benefits and the different work conditions. Are there going to be remote days for your teaching? Is it 100% in the classroom? What does that look like? And then really take the time to think about if the school is a good fit for you as well. Lastly, we'll end, we put a question slide in here, even though there's not a way for you to ask questions, but as you've gone through this presentation, if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to us. Here is our contact information. And again, we are always happy to help. So feel free to reach out, set an appointment if you need to. I hope this information was helpful, and we hope to see all of you soon. Good luck as you apply for jobs. Thank you. Bye-bye.